Ready to think pink? Join us for a little mindset magic, some happiness hacks, a little moral musings, and maybe some spiritual sparks. Welcome to the Pink Zone. Time to get your mind right. And today we're talking to business owner and insurance specialist, Jeremy Stepp. Enjoy. Can you recall a particular time when you felt like you really did achieve something significant, and then maybe what it took to get you there?
Sure. As you know, Kristen, I had a service business for 11 years, and then when the economy collapsed in 2008, it was a very tough time for everybody. That people, especially here in Phoenix, we were the foreclosure capital in the country, and so people weren't really wanting my service when they couldn't pay their house. Right, my house in foreclosure. I'm not going to pay for your luxury service. So when I started with very little, because I was following in the footsteps of my grandfather and my dad, and I got help along the way. We get successful people, we get help along the way, and so many people do not take time to be grateful for the individuals that have, in the circumstances that have helped them along the way. And my dad's like, look, you know how to do this. You have these set of skills. I have the tools. I have the parts and things like that you need to do this. When I achieved that, and that achievement, it took me, like I said, I was working 6 to 7 days a week, 15, 16-hour days to get there. I had my cell phone basically glued to my hip. I remember my cell phone being in the kitchen on the counter, and it was like 5 a.m, and I heard it ring, and man, I was like running, and I felt like Tom Cruise on Risky Business, sliding down the hallway, and grabbing the phone. And it was a customer from North Scottsdale who needed me to go and move his clock that day, right? So it took me doing that to get there. But because I hadn't built it in a sustainable way, meaning that if Jeremy wasn't there every day, if Jeremy wasn't the one answering the phone, if Jeremy wasn't the one meeting the customers at the service counter in my office, if all these things, it was built on my personality, my abilities, things like that, then things they waffled. Every time I tried to hire somebody, it didn't matter how good they were, we wanted to talk with Jeremy.
I know, right?
It's like, that's not why I hired them, to try and leverage some time.
Right.
So I found great success, but I didn't start out with the end in mind and build it sustainably. And then once I took my foot off the accelerator, there was no cruise control. The car just stopped, right?
Yes. Yeah. I feel that saved so much.
And my income was completely affected.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so how do you handle those setbacks and failures on the path to success? Like what would you say was something that helped you whenever you felt, failure is inevitable. We all face it, and it's never ending, right? Like there's always some aspect of it in life. But what would you say was something that helped you cope with that?
So I'm gonna put this disclaimer out there. Everybody's different, right? And we all have different experiences. We all have different ways of handling things. I went into a very sort of dark place, and I'm a real big fan of comparative mythologist Joseph Campbell. I would totally recommend reading his books. You can get them on Audible, listen to them, like The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It really opened up a lot of things for me after I'd gone through all this. So for example, the idea of the dark night of the soul, where I spent probably 10 years, to use biblical language, in a wilderness experience of my life, that after I closed my business, I had 20 jobs in 10 years. 20 jobs, and those ranged from I worked there a couple of weeks, I worked there for over a year, I worked there for 6 months, and there was a lot of things, a lot of change happening in me. Now, at the time, I did not recognize that. I really thought, man, you are a failure. You are a screw up. Why can't you keep a job? All these things that I kept repeating over and over in my head that just kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And I'm like, you know what? At the time, it was a real struggle. But one thing that Joseph Campbell also talks about is you walk up to the edge of the dark forest, and to live a full life, you should walk into the dark forest where there is no path. Make a path for yourself. Do not go and follow someone else's steps, and you're not being authentic to yourself.
Love
You're
that.
following someone else's steps. Create your own path.
I
And
just read
so,
that yesterday, so the fact that you just said that, spot on. So continue. I'm sorry.
and so again, I'm reading Joseph Campbell stuff years later after this experience has happened, and I'm reflecting back, and I'm like, oh. So I had to go through, and I do say I had to go through these things. I know there are plenty of people out there that would say, oh, you didn't have to. No, I had to. I had to have a change of character inside myself. Now, when I had my business for years and stuff like that, I wouldn't say that I was a cheat and a liar. Okay. I would say that there were times, because of it, how it benefited me at that time, that I might have played fast and loose with what was the truth, what was the best thing for the client, because it benefited me in my pocketbook.
Right.
Now, these are characteristics that I feel that God was was burning out of me, and it just took 20 jobs in 10 years. And the reason I say that is because once I started teaching special education, I'd been teaching special education about maybe 3 years, maybe it was my second year. And I was beating myself up. Every day I'd walk out of the parking lot, or out of the school into the parking lot to my car, and I'd be like, oh, I got to get out of here. I got to run away. And then I heard myself say that. And I'm like, why are you saying you got to run away?
You were hitting me in so many spots, man.
Stop saying you need to run away. Yes, it's okay to say, you know what, my day's over, and I'm glad to be going home and be with my family. That's fine, but this running away thing and stuff like that, and it reminded me of one of the newer Star Wars movies where this lady looks at Finn, and she pulls her glasses off, and she gets real close to him, right, and looks at his eyes and says, those are the eyes of a runner. You run away. And that was one of the struggles that his character had through the movies, was learning to not run away. And so I look back at my life and I'm like, yeah, I've run away. Things get tough, I run away. I don't stand my ground, So it was in that moment, though, or one of those similar moments, because I can't say it actually happened that particular time, but after I started doing that, I had this deep feeling inside that I would only call a prompting from the divine. So whatever word you want to use, infinite intelligence, universe, divine, God, that I had this prompting, and it was basically a voice clear as day that said, you had to experience all those things for 10 years. Because the job I'd gotten in special education actually ended up being a job that I was there because the person they'd hired quit 2 weeks after he got hired. He couldn't handle what he was doing. He was working one-on-one with an elementary student with autism. And the voice is like, you had to go through all these things so that your character would change inside, so that you would be ready for this specific opportunity. Because had this opportunity shown up before you were ready, you wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yes,
You wouldn't have been successful. I put you in those situations so that you would be successful today.
I love that. I
It
love
just
that so much.
blew my
Mind
mind.
blowing. And it's like when you hear those clear thoughts from the divine, or however you want to reference it, it's like it's really hard to do anything different, right? Like, okay, I heard that, I know what's being told to me, so this is the way I need to respond to that. How do you balance professional success with personal fulfillment and happiness? Do you feel like there's some like you have to balance that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important. And again, this is a area that I'm continuing to work on probably the rest of my life.
Of course, always.
You know, that you can, if you imagine a Venn diagram, right, where you have one circle and you have another circle, and then they sort of overlap in the middle, right, where they share things. And so you can have your professional and you can have your personal, and they might overlap in certain areas, but in general, your professional success is your professional success. And yes, that adds to potentially increased personal fulfillment, being able to have experiences your family wouldn't be able to have or otherwise. But one thing I've learned over the years, especially after my service business, is the idea that you need to be able to, like, if you have an office at home and you're working from home, you need to be able to have a door that you can close and walk away. Turn the light off, walk away, and know that, you know what, it's going to be okay. You need to be able to have a phone that goes to voicemail after, or an answering service after a certain time in the day, so that you can be fully present in your personal life. So you're not like me, running out at 8 o'clock at night, getting phone calls from customers when you're at dinner with friends, right? Taking service call appointments, writing them down, and your friends are scolding you because, like, man, you need to really get some balance. And I know, for the people that are going to be watching this, I know you. You're going to be like, but I have to, listen, from somebody who's been there, change your belief. You don't have to. You choose to.
Yes. And I tell people all the time, like, when anyone tells me I have to do something, I always, right away in my mind, I'm like, I don't have to do anything. So I love that you said that. Like, you have to develop that, right? Like, you don't have to do anything. You get to choose to. I love that you said that. Sorry to interrupt you. Just very valid to me. So in your opinion, is there such a thing as perfect success, or is it more of like an ongoing journey, do you think?
Well, let me tell you something, lady. If somebody think they got perfect success, they better go around and look. Success is an ongoing thing. It's like anything else. You're only as good as your last sale. You're only as good as your last accomplishment, and not. Let me clarify here. I'm not talking about our worth as human beings. Okay, or your worth, Kristen, as a mom, or my worth as a dad, right? Go in the back room of the house rent free and do it. And so I did it, and I said, okay, I finally came to a point in this business where I said, okay, I'll give myself 5 years. And if I cannot 100% support myself in 5 years, then I will go look at doing something else. Because it was a rough road, rough road to hoe. I mean, I lived at home till I was 25, not because I was like, yeah, I want to live at home, but because I knew I had this bigger overarching goal that I need to be able to grow this. I need to be able to get it to where it can 100% support me. And so I don't have to depend upon anyone else. And so I took advantage of what was offered to me, what was, given to me, rent-free office space and this and that. So then the business did grow and did take off. And like I said, I got to a point where money wasn't a problem. If you ever think there's perfect success, you're deluded.
Yes, I
You
agree
know,
with that. What would you say? I mean, and I agree with that. There's not perfection is. I mean, maybe if we're talking about a paint job on a car or something, but as far as human beings, it's more in depth than that, right? What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of the work or projects that you have undertaken?
um, feeling accomplished, that
Yes,
sense of accomplishment. Oh, yes, I finished this, or, you know, in my service business, working with, delicate machines and things like that, and figuring it out and getting it, and it's working, and, oh, just this
that
feeling
fulfillment.
of, yeah, that it's a great thing. I felt it was a great thing. Um, but then on the other hand, we can get um, we can get hooked to that feeling,
This is true.
that's what, oh, but if I'm not feeling it, oh, but and instead of looking at being grateful and stopping and saying, you know what, taking time for this moment,
Yes.
right? Like, I feel accomplished that I'm on this podcast with you, and I'm grateful for you and being here with you. Um, some people might look at it as, well, whatever, but for me, it's something I can be like, I can look back on and be like, yeah, that was great.
That was
You
fun. That was
know,
cool. Something that, like, and this is, I'm 38, but it's only been recent that I've been able to discover that, like, I had very high highs. Like, I would get very high on the fulfillment, the joy, the gratitude, but it's the polar opposite is getting too low, right? So I've been working on this balance, trying to have this stay flow through, every conversation, every interaction. And what I found is as I was navigating that and getting pretty good at it, I almost felt like because I wasn't feeling that really high anymore, like is this just life? Is this like, it felt boring, but it's like you have to realize that's not boring. That's sustainable, right? That is what's sustainable. So anyways, I appreciate you so much in our business and everything that you do and all the teamwork that you and I have been able to share together. And I kind of want to turn the conversation a little bit. How has your faith influenced your journey to success?
oh, yeah, God,
That old guy.
yeah, yeah, I'm talking about you. Uh, um, faith I think is a huge for me, but I would probably say for nearly everyone, even if you're agnostic or atheist, that there's some sort of power that, like, that AA talks about, some sort of thing that it's not just it's not just me.
Right.
Like, I'm a man, right? I was born, I was conceived, I was born, I was raised, and one day, like everyone, um, unless you subscribe to the Christian faith, which I do, everyone will die and turn to dust. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. So, um, about 15 years ago, I started looking and really looking at myself. And then, really, about 10 years ago, I actually, it was the first time I completely read the Bible. Um, I read parts of the Bible here and there, I read the Gospels, but I got tired of people, clergy, whatever, telling me that, well, this is what the Bible says. And I'm very much, even though I was born in Arizona, the older I get, I think I should have been born in Missouri because I'm definitely a show me type of guy, you know.
Can relate to that.
Um, and so, um, I started reading the Bible and I started using um, sort of like guideposts, not the devotional, but guideposts as far as aspects of God that pretty much all of Christianity, regardless of the denomination, agrees upon. Like, God is everywhere at all times.
Yes.
God is all knowing. God is love. God stands out of space and time. These type of things, to actually start looking through those lenses when I was reading the Bible, and to also understand about the culture of the time that these things were written. And as I started to do that, it really helped me to have a better understanding and a deeper faith and a deeper relationship, because I'm like, well, what I've been told all these years is this, but when I read this scripture and I run it through these different aspects, what I was told over here doesn't match over here. Like, God is angry, God is mean, God hates you, God's, like the boogeyman in your closet ready to jump out and be like, gotcha, right? And I think that it's very freeing. It's very freeing for me to be able to look at things like the Gospels and what were recorded, like when the religious leaders brought the adulterous woman in front of Jesus, and they had stones and they were going to stone the woman. Well, and I find it interesting because the law in the Old Testament says that they should be stoning the man too. But, that's when Jesus said his famous line, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Well, as Paul Harvey, the radio announcer, used to say, here's the rest of the story, right? That people we seem to skip over. That the people walked away, right? They dropped their rocks after Jesus said, like, he was without sin, cast the first stone, and they just sort of slank away and disappeared. Then Jesus walked up to the woman accused of adultery, and he says, "Has anybody condemned you here today?" And she said, "No." And he said, "And I don't condemn you either." Now, if Jesus was truly all God and all man, and God cannot be contrary to his own character, which means that Jesus would have been the only one to be able to throw a stone because he would have been sinless, then he was the only person there that had that ability. So he said, "Did anyone condemn you here today?" "No. And I don't condemn you either. Go and sin no more." In the Sermon on the Mount, when he said, "Why, O hypocrite, do you go and try and remove the splinter from your neighbor's eye when you have a plank or a log," right? Imagine a 2x4 coming out of your head, in your own eye. But what they forget is the rest of the story. The rest of the story, which is so important. First, remove the plank from your eye, and then help.
Yes.
Help, which is a big verb. Help your neighbor remove the splinter from their eye. Help, intending, right? Because it's the verb, that not just go over and take the splinter out of your neighbor's eye, right? Not because people can say, "No, I don't need your help," right? And that's where the love of Christ comes in, where we build relationships and we get to know, what does this person really need? What type of love? Jesus never gave the same answer to anybody in the Gospels. He told the rich young ruler, "Go and sell all your crap, man, and then come follow me." And the rich young ruler's like, "But And one guy's like, well, I gotta go bury my father. He's like, let the dead bury the dead and come
Yes.
follow me. But
Mhm.
so it took me a long time battling, having internal struggles, God working on my heart to understand that success, again, it's not really a physical thing. And yes, the money we get when we're successful, the fun tickets, as a friend of mine calls them, they're great. They allow us to do a lot of things. We can travel, we can have nice cars, we can have bigger houses, we can fully fund retirements, we can this, we can that. But stop. The least you do, or what you do for the least of these, you do for me. Okay? How many fancy pants cars do you need?
Right.
How many super big, redonkulous McMansions do you need? How many fancy clothes? I mean, heck, I go to the thrift store and shop just
I
because
still
who
do.
wants to pay who wants to pay full price, man? Come
I feel
on.
like it's such a win when I like find something at a reduced price with tags still on it. Like, oh yeah.
I go to
Anyways,
the convenience store and I'm like, I get my Diet Pepsi and I put my member card in and I save 10 cents and I'm like, yes. And
hallelujah.
they're like, it's just 85 cents, dude. And you save 10. And I'm like, yes, but I saved some money,
You know,
you know?
to your point, like on all those tangible things, it's like I don't feel like if you're not helping people with it, like it becomes almost numbing to have too much stuff, right? I don't know. Anyways, but I mean, was there a specific moment do you feel in your life when you felt God's guidance in your career or personal path that you literally can remember a time that it was God's direction?
Why, yes, Kristen Ruth Eisler, I'm glad you asked me that question. Um, I love using your whole name. I think it's great. Oh yeah, I mean, so definitely there's many, many times I felt God's guidance, and the closer that I've actually gotten to God, gotten in that relationship, the better it's been. Um, so I'm just gonna throw the one out there that I think is the most shocking to people if I tell them. I mean, I told you, but it's it because people are like, what? What? You're nuts, man. So, I've made my living for many years working with my hands. I'm very good at fixing things. I mean, that's just the way my brain is. I have a diagnostic type brain, and man, I got really good at it. It was a gift from God. That's not why I was here. It's not why I was put here. And I was so consumed in myself about doing whatever Jeremy needed to do to succeed and stepping on whoever Jeremy needed to step on to get there and bending the rules and not being completely honest and things like that, that one day I got badly hurt
Uh,
and I ended up in the hospital for 3 days. And yeah, it's pretty interesting when you're at a teaching hospital and the doctors bring all the interns by and you hear them saying, you'll probably never see an injury like this again in your career.
Uh-oh.
And they said they were going to cut my 4 fingers off my right hand. That's my dominant hand, first of all. And secondly, I want to leave with everything I came with. So, you know, and so as you can see, I mean, they didn't take them, but it came really close. And as I was laying in the hospital bed, and I don't know whether it was all the good drugs they were giving me or whatever, but um, I had this feeling inside me and this audible voice that said, "We've been trying to get your attention for a while now. Are you listening now?"
Mm.
And at that point, I'm like, "Dear God, I am listening. I am drugged up on some good morphine, and now I can't poop because I'm constipated because all these drugs. And I just had 2 male nurses give me a shower and wash me. So you better believe I'm listening."
Hilarious.
Yeah. And that's what led me to start going down the road to become a special education teacher.
Oh, wow.
Because this again, the verbal interior voice was like, look, you're really good at doing this and helping one customer at a time, and that's great. You weren't put here for this.
Mm-hmm.
You need to help the least of these in a large way. You need to go and do this. And as you know, as I've been moving forward with you in business and things like that, that's expanding, right? That, okay, I can only help so many special education children as one person in a lifetime of career. But I can help lots of families change their lives.
Amen. Yes.
And then how many generations are affected by that?
And I want to pause right there for a second because my heart is always with children, but I always I would love to work with children, but I always feel like by working with the parents and the adults in the industries that we're in, that is helping the children because they have children. And if we can help the parents' minds, they take that home and they're raising their children. As much as we love children, we're not in the homes raising them day to day. Their parents are. So I love that this has come up and that you were explaining that. Like that is you affect the mom and the father, and you're affecting the whole household, right?
Yeah, and look, when I was about 4 or 5, my parents they started to work Amway. Okay.
Mm-hmm. My mom did that
too.
So
I'm the oldest of 2 kids. My brother is almost 5 years younger than me. And it's amazing at times to see the difference in personalities and in responses to things, because at that time, at that such a formative time in a child's mind, 4 and 5, my parents were doing Amway. And so I got bombarded with all the tapes, right? All the positive stuff, the magic of thinking big, think and grow rich, can't never could do anything, inch by inch, anything's a cinch. All these things. I had the shirts, I had them on my wall, and so it was ingrained in me, and there's a lot of it that just seems natural to me. But then I look at someone like my brother who didn't experience that, and it's like night and day.
It's so true. And you know what? Just you bringing that up, like my mom, I think she had a very rough upbringing, and I think she entered a lot of these MLMs, and I think it was for that. She was just trying to find a source of anybody to give her that kind of belief. And what I remember, looking back at that now that you brought that up, it's just watching her get creamed by our friends, our family, and our environment for even thinking that way. Why is it so? It's so crazy. It's like environment is so important. She tried very hard, but it's sometimes it's that crab in the bucket thing, right? Like she just kept getting pulled back down. And so I find it in my point in my life now. My mom was here at the office yesterday, and we were kind of talking, and we had a rough relationship for a very long time, and now I very much so want the success as much for myself and my children, for my own mother, because she deserved it. She never had that person. So anyways, to your brother, it's like you got that experience by watching your parents, but by the time your brother rolled around, he just didn't have that. So it's influence, environment, it plays such a key role.
Yeah.
So in times of doubt or difficulty, how would you say your faith has helped you stay grounded and focused?
That's a battle.
Yeah, always. And it's
a battle.
It's not that I hate, but sometimes when people just make everything seem so easy, it's like, okay, that's great, but let's try to make it realistic for the people that it's not that easy, right? So thank you for saying it's a battle, because it is.
It is. Not that I spend a lot of time watching Joyce Myers on TV.
Yeah.
But one of her books, if I remember right, my mom and aunt watch her a lot. Mm-hmm. One of her books is like the battlefield of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that is huge, because it's like, even with my faith, I still I still struggle. I still this, I still that. But when it comes down to it, though, it's like I try and find ways to ground myself. Okay, so there have been times where I've been so just beyond like anxious and um, throttled up and this and that, um, that the only thing I can listen to that will actually calm me down and help me go to sleep is just set my audio Bible on Matthew 1:1 and just let it play. And I set a timer for about 4 hours. That way it doesn't wake me up. And I put it down. I put the volume down where I can hear it, but not to where it's overwhelming me. And those words, hearing those words, they just calm me down.
Yes.
Just bring me down. Not bring me down depression. Bring me down to
level.
a grounded area. There are a lot of other things that I've never in my life at this point been the person that's been able to go and say, Lord, I give this to you, and never pick it up again. Okay, so God bless those people that can do that. That's just not how I'm wired. So along with my faith, I've used a lot of cognitive behavior therapy techniques where it's like, okay, what's the worst that can happen?
Yes. You know what I tell myself? Like the worst possible solution or the worst possible outcome is I die. And you know what? That doesn't seem that bad because I know where I'm going.
I make it I exaggerate it a lot at times where it's like, okay, I made a mistake at my job. What's the worst that can happen? Well, they can go and they can grab me by my arms and drag me out
Sure.
into the parking lot and execute me. Well, how likely is that? Very unlikely.
For sure.
And then you step it down to the next one and the next one until I can get to a point like, okay, so what's the worst that can happen? This, right? Okay. Now, how do I pivot? Is there anything I can do? What can I change? And at some point along the way, I do get to a point where I'm like, well, God, it really is in your hands. Either I really screwed up and I consciously screwed up and that's on me, or sin in the Bible, like in Old Testament, is like you missed the mark or you wander off course. And so it's like, well, did I wander off course deliberately, or did I miss the mark deliberately, or did I do it unknowingly? If it's unknowing, then it's like, okay, well, I did it unknowingly. So I'll own it, take responsibility for it, and then do my best to not do it again. If it's deliberately, then I have to do some real internal, look inside and be like, well,
why did that? Why? Yeah.
Why did I do that? Why was I doing that? And then taking again steps from the 12-step programs, right? It's like, okay, go and try and make amends, make it right.
Sure.
With the understanding that make amends is not going to be the person's going to accept it.
Yeah, and it's you want it to be for them, but ultimately it's for you, right? Like, because you need to clear yourself or clear your feelings, and as long as that intent, like, I know some people think that or say that like intention's not everything, but in my mind it sort of is, because like even when we make mistakes, if those mistakes are made, but they were not made on malicious intention, they were just made because, like you said, lack of knowledge, not knowing, like that, or operating off of a sense of feeling, which sometimes our feelings can be, maybe wrong. But again, that goes back to having to do the self-work and realize, why did those feelings come about? Where, a lot of things, it always stems back from childhood, I think. Like, that's a whole nother session. But
yes.
Do you feel that success can be a form of ministry or service to others? And how do you see your success as a blessing to others, Jeremy? And by the way, your success is a major blessing for me and my family. So I just want to say that and tell you how much I appreciate you. But how do you feel about that?
Um, so I don't see how anyone. And so yeah, I'm calling people out here, but I'll buy you a Starbucks or whatever. Yeah, because
Starbucks cheers all.
because I'm calling myself out. Okay, that success is not properly executed if you're the one that's on the top of the mountain and there's no one there. Because you've got to be sharing your success. You've got to be remembering and being great and showing gratitude for the people that helped you get there.
Yes.
Because none of us did it alone.
Nobody, right?
I've heard the saying, well, there's nothing free in the world. And then people will say, well, if somebody gives me a book, that was free. Well, look, if you want the information in that book, you have to spend time to get the knowledge from that author. So you did spend something. Well, those who can do, and those who can't teach.
Yes.
Really, because even if you taught yourself something, did you really teach yourself that?
Right.
Or do you owe gratitude to a YouTube video or to
the writer of the book or
a guide or something like that? So that's super important. I think that with success is yes, like in an airplane, if you're in an airplane and the oxygen mask comes down, yes, you take care of yourself first, because in order to help others, you have to be here, right?
So important.
You're not going to be able to help very many people if you're scattered.
If you're erratic and just, yeah.
But the first thing should be, how can I help?
Right.
What's the way I can help? And this is a balance beam too, because we can get real dopamine highs off of over helping.
Yes.
And
then it becomes, yeah, I love it, man. Keep going. Sorry.
And the idea that, well, I help this person, well, I help that person, well, this or that. And so a good example would be, my brother was very kind to let my family borrow 2 cars for a while, and we're very grateful for that. We really are. And we ended up not being able to continue to borrow them. And he and I had a different point of view about some stuff, and so he decided to take his cars back, which is fine. They're his cars. But it's one of those things of, in my opinion, when you help someone, it's helping. It's not, now I own you.
Right. And when I help somebody, I thank God for the ability, because it flows, right? It flows from Him through us to others.
We have to be thankful, but then we have to let it go.
Yes.
Not use it as, well, remember when I did that, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
And so if it's alone, everybody knows it's alone. If it's really helping, then everybody knows we're really helping. But I think a good example biblically would be where Jesus told the religious leaders, go in your closet and pray to the Father. Don't come out in public and try and show all the how great you are based on all the prayers and all your wailing and this and that,
Mhm.
because you've gotten your reward. You've gotten the people to be like, and you're doing it for you. Now, yeah, when we help people, we get this great feeling inside, but we shouldn't be doing it for the great feeling.
No, absolutely not. Right.
We should be doing it to help. And I think that's really challenging
Yeah.
because, that Jesus also said that narrow is the path and few will make it. And it's like, okay, well, what am I doing this? Or why am I doing this? Why am I doing this for this person? I have the ability to bless someone. Why am I doing it? Am I doing like, hey, God, look at this $20 I'm giving this homeless person. You
Right.
making sure you got this?
Yeah.
And I have to fight in myself to make sure that my heart is in the right place
Mhm.
so that I'm not going and being like, hey, I gave you $20,
Yeah.
and let it be right there.
Yeah.
And then know that I was able to help because of my success. I was able to help, even if it was just a little for that one individual. It might have been a lot for that one individual.
For sure.
It might have been little to me, but there have been times where I bought food for people or whatever, and I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying that, you know what? If you've ever been hungry, you've ever been where you've missed more than just one or two meals, not on purpose. Come on, Americans. Like,
Right.
that even getting a couple of hot dogs from the convenience store is a freaking blessing.
It is a blessing. You're right. I always have this an image of, I love roller skating. I've always loved roller skating, and as I'm older now, like I imagine me in my life, I'm just skating through life and I'm handing out what I can hand out and I'm giving, but I keep going. I'm not skating and then stopping and like rolling in the giving, right? You're just skating through. God's putting people in front of you. Like you and I, think about it, Jeremy. Like you're in Arizona, I'm in Texas. We got connected through a lady in California. Like it's nothing but God that we're here today chit chatting, right? Like so it's just like you give, and as you're skating through, you're receiving as well. And so it just becomes like this cycle, this flow of giving and taking, and just being grateful for all of it. Sometimes, although I would like to say I just skate 24/7, there's times I mentioned to you before this last night was I had to take an hour to just pause and stop for a second because sometimes it all builds up, right? And we have to deal with that when it builds up. Otherwise, I think that's when our behavior becomes erratic and becomes off the wall or whatever. But I love so much of what you have said, and I know I could talk to you all day. I have one last question. What advice would you give someone who is trying to find both success and purpose through their faith? And I want to elaborate a little bit more through their faith, but we know that the world is not free. So although we want to have success and purpose through faith, we also understand that there has to be income generated so that we can provide for ourselves and provide for our family. So just in your own words, through your experience, what advice would you give someone who's trying to come to that?
So success and purpose, you know, through faith. So this is Jeremy's theology that in Jeremiah it talks about how God knew you in the womb
Yes.
and knit you together, and he has plans for you. Now look, I'm not going to say, just take a verse out of the Bible and that's what it means for you. But on the other hand, I'm not going to put God in a box either
Amen.
and say that a particular verse doesn't just strike you and mean something for you. But God knows you. God knows who you are. God knew you before you were even out of the womb. God knew you before you were even in the womb. Because God stands outside of space and time.
Yes.
So God has a plan for you. Now, God has a plan for me. God has a plan for you, Kristen, and your kids. And, God has a plan for everyone. It's our job to try and figure out what that is. Because, you know what? I do not remember being the one that pulled the lever to say that I was going to be white and born in America. Right? I did not pull the lever to choose what womb I was in. I do not remember that. So what I do know is that human beings suffer from a power disorder. We abuse power when we have it if we don't check ourselves. And this goes back, if you're a Christian, if you are a Jewish person, if it goes back, right? Adam and Eve and this and that. But it's a human trait. Look at somebody that's like we're at a concert and someone's up here and she's sweating. My gosh, she's on my shoulder and I've never done shit. Gross, first of all, but so we have power trips, and that's one thing we have to fight. The Apostle Paul said in his letters that Jesus looked at the power of God as something not to be grasped. Now, for a long time, I struggled with that passage. Doesn't mean like not to be understood. It means, when you look it up in the Greek, not to be actually physically grabbed and taken. Okay, so that's the first thing that I think I had to understand and keep reminding myself is that, look, I'm not God.
Yes.
I'm a man. And I am not going to try and grasp his power. And I'm not going to do that to other people. So, in order to before you can be successful and be successful in a way that is meaningful and that is helpful to as many people as possible, you have to have a foundation in right things, in right thinking, in right words.
Yes.
In right actions. Because I've heard so many people that say, I've prayed to God for a new car. Well, don't you have a brand new car that you just got? Well, yeah. Or I've prayed to God for a girlfriend. Don't you have a wife? Like, what are we asking for? Like, that's the wrong idea of success, in my opinion. In my opinion, the correct idea of success is understanding our place. And then here's what I think happens if we look at it this way. Even if you're watching this video and you do not believe that Jesus was the Son of God, you do not believe that he even existed, you don't believe in any of the miracles, great. Hey, I understand. No worries. We can still be friends. But one thing that if you can show me that is better than this one idea that Jesus presented or said to have presented is love.
Amen.
Show me something better than love.
It's always the answer.
And I will go and I will follow you to the end of the earth. But here's the thing. We talk about the cross. It's going to be Easter here next month soon and things like that. And in the church, traditionally, we talk about, Jesus died on the cross and was resurrected. You know what? The fact that he was resurrected, that's great. It was just another miracle to show how much people Still wouldn't believe. But the cross would have meant nothing, would have meant nothing if this poor carpenter from the backwoods of Galilee in a small town called Nazareth that
Mm-hmm.
stands for Stick Town, if that 33 years that led up to that were not what he lived. Love. Now get this. God has no image. He does not want us to create an image of him. He does not want us to worship him that way. So, what does he do? He creates other humans and he says, "You're made in my
In my
image."
image. Yes.
So, when you relate and you build relationships with other humans,
Mm-hmm.
you are worshiping God.
Yes.
You're loving God. You're loving humans.
Yes.
The Old Testament says, and Jesus repeated it, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. These are the two great commandments. And if you do those two things, the other 10 fall into line.
Amen. Right.
But so here's the thing. When we look at the cross, we have the post that goes vertically, we have the post that goes horizontally. And um, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, you know what? If you are at odds with your neighbor, you need to go and you need to make it right. If you're going to go and give your sacrifice at the temple, you need to fix it. You need to go back and fix it before you give your sacrifice to the temple. Well, you know what? If Jesus was indeed all God and all man, and God knows everything and God's character cannot be changed, then the way I take that is that means that if we're looking at the vertical of the cross and the horizontal of the cross, Kristen, this between you and me or between anyone else, the horizontal part must be right for us to do the vertical part.
Love that, man. I love that. And I just think like what you just said about, we're being made in his image. It's like whoever you believe you are at your core, that's who God is, right? And whether that's right or that's wrong, that's up to the individual, right? I mean, if God is all loving, but you're not a loving person, you don't believe in God, well, that's just because that's who you are, right? So anyways, I'll stop there. Jeremy, thank you so much for doing this. This is my first recording with anybody, kind of diving into this type of stuff. I believe that, that God, spirituality, whatever your religion is, whatever it is, it's faith, right? And I believe faith in our careers need to be hand in hand for us to make the most difference in the world and to make the most impact. I am blessed to have you in my life. I'm blessed to be working with somebody like you. I adore your family. I'm very grateful. Any last words or remarks before we wrap up?
Definitely thank you for having me here. Uh, it's, it's pretty cool. Gonna make me get all squishy inside. Um, and yes, and the same with you and your family and your amazing kiddos. You know, I'm grateful for you all.
Oh, you've been in Texas 3 days and now you use them, y'all. I love it.
Oh, you know, so otherwise, I look forward to seeing how this is going to grow. And
One direction, and that's up. And if you guys want to reach out to Jeremy, if you need any assistance with auto home business insurance, you can reach out to him at jeremy.stepp, STEPP, at universalwealthpnc.com. Plug Universal Wealth. He is an amazing human being. We are operating in Texas, Arizona, California, Oklahoma, soon to be in all 50 states. please send him an email if you need any service from him or if you just like to have a conversation because he's an awesome conversationalist. Thank you so much again, Jeremy. God bless you, man. And I look forward to talking to you really soon.
All right. Thank you so much.